The wind cut through Redemption Hollow like it had teeth, snapping at the corners of buildings and rattling the windows of Garrett's Mercantile. It was Christmas morning, 1891. Church bells rang from the white steeple on the hill, calling people to worship, but Elena Moss sat alone on a wooden bench outside the store, her gloved fingers closed tight around the coins in her hand. 73 cents. She had counted them 3 times already, spreading the pennies and nickels across her lap, then gathering them again, as if counting might somehow make more appear. It never did. Desperation followed strict rules. There were no miracles in it. Around her, the town moved with holiday cheer. Families walked the snow-dusted boardwalk in their best clothes. Men wore heavy wool coats and clean hats. Women wrapped in velvet cloaks, guided children bundled like small parcels. From somewhere down the street came the smell of roasting meat and cinnamon. A fiddle played a Christmas tune Elena remembered from childhood. She pulled her shawl tighter. It was thin cotton, made for Virginia springs, not Montana winters. Her dress, once respectable, hung loose on her body now. She had lost weight she could not afford to lose. 6 months. That was all it took for hope to be stripped down to nothing. She had arrived in June with a trunk and a future promised in ink. James Whitmore's letters had been full of plans. A ranch, cattle, a home under the wide Montana sky. He had written like a man with room in his life for a wife. Back in Richmond, he had spoken to her father, asked for her hand, and looked honest doing it. She had believed him. The trunk still sat in the room she rented above the milliner's shop. She could not afford to keep it much longer. Mrs. Carmichael had made that clear 3 days ago, standing in the doorway with her arms crossed and her mouth tight. "I run a respectable establishment, Miss Moss, not a charity house. Miss Moss, not Mrs. Whitmore." The town had made sure she understood that difference the day the stagecoach arrived. She had stepped down hopeful and tired from travel, only to find James waiting at the depot with another woman at his side. The woman wore a wedding ring that caught the sun. James had introduced her calmly, his wife, married 2 years. He had looked uncomfortable, but not ashamed. "I should have written," he said, but Sarah wouldn't have understood. Elena had sold everything to come west. Her mother's silver, her grandmother's small inheritance. Every dollar had gone toward a journey to a man who already belonged to someone else. Now it was Christmas morning, and she had 73 cents and nowhere left to go. The cold worked through her shawl and into her bones as the church service ended. Elena watched people spill out onto the street, laughing, greeting one another, full of warmth that had nothing to do with weather. She turned her face away. She had seen the looks before, curiosity mixed with judgment. The woman who came west for a husband who did not want her. Her fingers had gone numb. She barely noticed when one coin slipped free and rolled off the bench, landing in the snow with a small, sharp sound. A penny. It sat there bright against the white, accusing her of carelessness. She should pick it up. Every cent mattered. But the weariness inside her was heavier than the cold. She stared at the coin as if it held every loss she had suffered. "You dropped something." The voice came from beside her, low, steady. Elena turned. A man stood near the bench, tall and broad, wearing a worn canvas coat and a hat pulled low. She could not see his eyes clearly, only the hard line of his jaw and skin shaped by years of weather. He bent down and picked up the penny from the snow. When he straightened, he held it out to her. Elena hesitated. The gesture felt too close, too knowing. Still, she reached out and took it, her fingers clumsy with cold. "Thank you," she said. He nodded but did not leave. For a moment, he simply stood there. Elena felt shame rise in her chest. She knew how she looked. Thin, alone, counting coins on Christmas morning. "I'm not begging," she said quickly. "I'm just—"
She did not finish.
"I know what you're doing," he said. There was no judgment in his voice, only certainty. "You're deciding whether a meal today matters more than a room tomorrow." The words struck too close. Elena looked away, blinking hard. "You can't solve this with 73 cents," he continued. 74, she corrected without thinking, closing her fist around the penny. One corner of his mouth shifted, not quite a smile. He looked toward the mercantile, then back at her. When he spoke again, his voice carried weight. I have a proposition, not charity. Work? Her heart skipped. She had heard propositions before. Her expression must have shown it because he raised his hand slightly. I need a cook and housekeeper. My ranch is 15 miles north. The work is hard. It's isolated. I can't pay much, but there's a room, 3 meals, and wages enough to save. He paused. It's honest work. Elena studied what she could see of his face, searching for the lie. She found only patience. Why me? She asked. He was quiet for a long moment. Because you're not carrying this alone anymore, he said. Not if you don't want to. She rode north out of Redemption Hollow in the back of his wagon, her trunk tied down behind her. The town shrank against the white land until it disappeared. The man had given his name as Caleb Brennan. He handled the reins with ease, saying little. She had accepted because she had no choice. As the prairie opened wide and empty, the weight of what she had done settled over her. She was riding into isolation with a man she did not know because staying meant freezing slowly in plain sight. The fear was real. So was the relief. The land stretched endless and silent. Snow-covered hills rolled toward distant mountains. After a long while, Caleb spoke, explaining the house, the barn, the animals, the work. When the ranch came into view, smoke rising from a stone chimney, Elena felt something loosen in her chest. It was simple, plain, isolated, but it was shelter. It'll do, she said softly. Caleb nodded once. Yes, he said, it will. The first week at the ranch passed quietly, marked by routine and restraint. Elena learned the house the way one learns a stranger, carefully and without assumption. She rose before dawn each morning to light the stove, learning how the old iron belly breathed, when it needed coaxing and when it burned too hot. By the time pale light crept through the kitchen window, coffee simmered and breakfast was ready. Caleb ate quickly, speaking little, then pulled on his coat and stepped into the cold. Elena watched him through the glass as she washed the dishes. He moved with purpose, every motion practiced. He fed the chickens, milked the cows, hauled water, and checked the horses before the sun fully cleared the hills. He worked like a man who had learned to rely on no one. Inside, Elena found work waiting for her. The house was not dirty, but it carried the marks of long solitude. Dust coated the window ledges, floors needed scrubbing. Cupboards held supplies arranged without care. A rocking chair sat by the cold fireplace, untouched for months. She cleaned one room at a time. Each task grounded her. Each scrubbed surface felt like a small victory. For the first time in months, her effort produced visible change. On the third day, she noticed the door to Caleb's room stood slightly open. She had avoided that end of the hall, but her eyes caught something unexpected. Books. A small shelf beside his bed, spines worn and handled often. It did not match the image she had built of him. She said nothing. They spoke only of practical matters, supplies, weather, animals. Yet Elena began to notice small things. He left extra firewood by the stove. He removed his boots at the door without being asked. One evening, she found dried winter flowers arranged in a jar on the windowsill. He never mentioned them. Late one night, he found her at the kitchen table, tears falling quietly onto the wood. He did not ask questions. He set a cup of coffee beside her and went upstairs. That kindness stayed with her. 2 weeks passed before Elena dared change something. One evening, instead of leaving his supper covered while she ate alone, she set 2 plates at the table. When Caleb came in, he paused. Thought it made sense, she said. No reason to heat the room twice. He studied her for a moment, then nodded. Makes sense. They ate in silence, but it was a different kind now. Not distance, something gentler. The letter arrived late in January, carried by a ranch hand passing through. Caleb brought it in and set it on the table. For you. The envelope was thick, the handwriting careful. No return address. Elena felt a tightness in her chest. Stay, she said before he could leave. He sat by the stove, giving her space without leaving. She opened the letter and read slowly. Then again. It told the truth James Whitmore had hidden. About another woman. About lies repeated. About a sister who had not survived the shame Elena carried. Her hands trembled. Caleb read the letter when she gave it to him. His jaw tightened. "He's a predator," Caleb said. "You were never the problem." The words broke something open inside her. She had spent months believing she was foolish, unworthy, weak. Now the weight shifted. "I thought it was me," she whispered. Caleb crossed the room and took her hand. His grip was steady. "No," he said. "Never." She cried then, not from defeat, but release. He stayed with her, silent and solid. February brought storms that trapped them indoors for days. They moved through the house with easy familiarity, shared meals, shared quiet. One night, while the wind howled outside, Caleb spoke. "I had a wife once, and a son." Elena listened as he told her about Colorado, about scarlet fever, about loss that emptied his life in 3 weeks, about running north to survive what remained. "I saw myself in you," he said. "That's why I stopped." The truth settled between them. A week later, Elena told him about Mrs. Ben Carmichael's message, a position in the city. "Better wages. Are you going to take it?" he asked. She had thought about it, calculated, planned. "No," she said. She chose the ranch, the work, the man who had offered her dignity when she had none left. "I'm afraid," she admitted, "but I'm more afraid of running forever." Caleb studied her, then reached for her hand. "Then I'm choosing you too," he said. And for the first time since arriving in Montana, Elena felt certain she was not surviving. She was building. Spring came slowly to Montana that year, as if the land itself needed time to believe winter was truly finished. Snow lingered in the shadows long after the sun softened the fields, and the creek behind the barn stayed swollen and loud. But life returned inch by inch, steady and determined. Elena felt the change before she saw it. The mornings no longer cut as sharply. The air smelled less like iron and more like earth. The horses grew restless, shifting in their corral, sensing movement ahead. And inside the house, something else was changing too. The days after her decision settled into a deeper rhythm. Elena worked with a steadiness she had not known before. Not the frantic effort of someone trying to prove worth, but the calm labor of someone who belonged where she stood. She cooked meals that filled the house with warmth. She planned supplies carefully. She kept accounts, repaired clothing, and learned which corners of the land flooded first when the snow melted. Caleb noticed everything, though he rarely said so. He listened when she spoke. He asked her opinion on purchases, on fences that needed repair, on which horses might sell best come summer. Slowly, without ceremony, the ranch stopped feeling like his alone. One evening in early March, Elena found him sitting on the front step, staring toward the hills. The sky was streaked with orange and pale blue. "You're quiet," she said, settling beside him. "Thinking," he answered. "Dangerous habit." He gave a small smile. "I was thinking about how different this place feels." She waited. "I used to come inside and hear nothing," he continued. "Now I hear the stove crackle, plates on the table, footsteps." Elena looked out across the land. "I hear it too," she said. "The quiet feels different." They sat together until the cold pushed them inside. The marriage happened without fanfare. A circuit preacher passed through in early April, muddy boots and a tired smile. 2 ranch hands stood witness in the front room while rain tapped gently on the roof. Elena wore her best dress, freshly mended. Caleb wore clean work clothes. Their vows were simple, honest, spoken without doubt. Afterward, nothing changed and everything did. Elena signed her name differently now, Mrs. Elena Brennan. The words felt strange at first, then solid. She burned the last letter tied to James Whitmore, watching the paper curl and blacken in the stove. When the ashes cooled, she scattered them outside. She did not carry him anymore. The town learned soon enough. Caleb brought Elena with him on the next supply trip, introduced her plainly as his wife. Raised eyebrows followed them through the mercantile. Whispers trailed behind. Elena felt them and let them pass. Their judgment had no weight here. Back at the ranch, life grew fuller. Elena began keeping chickens of her own, selling eggs in town. She helped train the younger horses, watching how Caleb spoke softly, how he waited. She recognized herself in those animals, once wild with fear, now learning trust. One afternoon, she stood at the kitchen window watching Caleb work the corral. The stallion moved calmly at his side, no rope needed now. Elena smiled. She reached into her apron pocket and felt the folded letter she had written, but not sent. A polite refusal to Mrs. Ciali, Carmichael's cousin. She read it once more, then placed it in the stove. The paper burned clean. The door opened behind her. Caleb's arms wrapped around her waist, warm and familiar. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "How close I came to leaving," she said, "and how wrong it would have been." "You chose," he said quietly. "Yes," she answered. "I did." He kissed her temple, then stepped back. "Come on, we've got work to do." They stepped outside together. The sun broke through the clouds, lighting the fields in gold. Elena breathed in the air and felt something settle deep inside her. She had not been rescued. She had been seen. And in choosing to stay, to work, to trust again, she had found more than shelter. She had found a life built not on promises, but on shared days, honest labor, and the quiet strength of not being alone. The woman who once sat counting pennies on a cold bench felt like someone she knew well, but no longer was. Elena Brennan walked forward without looking back, hand in hand with the man who had bent down once and spoken the words that changed everything. "You're not carrying this alone.